there are three basic themes that I'm going to kind of hang everything off of today. One is humility and accountability. The next one is consistency. And the third one is growth mindset, right? And kind of all the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, both personally and professionally, try to revolve around that.
Thanks everyone for joining, and tonight's webinar is Leadership is Not About Me. I'll be your moderator for tonight, and before we start, a quick introduction to Professional Development Forum, or PDF. So PDF was established to help diverse young professionals reach their full potential in modern Australian workplace. We believe that everyone, not just the elite few, should have access to the knowledge, mindset, and network to develop themselves. We believe that by becoming the best version of ourselves, we lead a happier, more fulfilling life and inspire those around us to do the same. We do this by running events that aim to inform, connect, and inspire, and by sharing what we learned with our community. Now, just a few housekeeping rules. We encourage everyone to please turn on your webcam so you can better connect with each other. Feel free to leave your LinkedIn details in the chat box and add each other. And if you have any questions at any time throughout the sessions, or if you would like to comment on anything that was said, then feel free to type it in the chat, and we will invite you to ask your questions at any time during the event or during the Q&A. Please note that this event is being recorded, so it may be shared on social media. Tonight, we're very, very lucky to be joined by Matt Glitzer. He's joining us all the way from Singapore. He's the Vice President of IBM Security for Asia Pacific. Matt is an exceptional leader with experience across both IBM and SAP. He is currently responsible for all security software sales and services in the region, and a member of IBM's regional senior leadership team. He's held various roles, including General Manager for Global Technology Services in Hong Kong and Head of Client Management and Offering. So he's also a soccer coach, and he keeps himself healthy by going for walks and also doing push-ups in between meetings. A few things I personally like about Matt is that he's very approachable, and he's an advocate for women in cybersecurity. And he also encourages others to be the best version of themselves. So without further ado, Matt, I'll let you take it in from there.
Thank you, Thurinda, and just thank you, Thurinda. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks everybody for having me here. It's a lot of fun for me to share. It's great to see Fiona as well. Hi, Fee, and one of our IBM security leaders. So it's kind of funny to have a title of is the talk. The leadership is not about me, and then to talk about me. So it's a little weird, but I think what I'll do, and talking with Thurinda and with Jeff, obviously you're a group of people who are interested not only in improvement but in learning, and hopefully I can share some. And what I'll do, and I'll be looking down at my notes because I didn't prepare a speech per se, right? It's much more about a dialogue. What I will do though is I'll share some anecdotes and some kind of key tenets, if you will, about how I became who I am, which is not so wonderful, but is I think we all have something to learn from each other, and I will do that for 20, 25, 30 minutes, whatever it is, and then leave time open for dialogue, right? Because I think that I found, at least for me, one of the most important things is to be able to talk to people and ask questions and just get a little bit of feedback and learn a bit. So I hope that works for everybody. As we start, what I'd like everybody to do is take a second and write down, type in, whatever you do, what your definition of success is. Take 30 seconds, and again, whatever pops in your head, how do you define success?
Share in the chat box, you mean, or?
No, you don't have to put it. You don't have to put it in the chat box. You can write it for yourselves. We'll take. If you feel like putting them in the chat box, that's fine. 'Cause we'll do this again a couple more times. But this one I'm going to leave to the end. So everybody's done that. So I'll give you guys a little bit of background on me, but as we go through the discussion, and you can hold me accountable to it as well, there are three basic themes that I'm going to kind of hang everything off of today. One is humility and accountability. The next one is consistency, and the third one is growth mindset, right? And kind of all the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, both personally and professionally, try to revolve around that. But so where do I come from? I am clearly American. I am from the great state of New Jersey, born and raised. I'm 53. I can't believe I'm that old. I went to, I've lived overseas when I was a kid. That's how I learned to speak Hebrew. I went there when I was 16 and 20 and 23 and lived in Israel. I went to Rutgers University. I've waited tables, delivered pizza, bartended, bounced, sold coffee and muffins on gas lines when I was 9 and 10 years old. So I've done a lot of different things. I am one of 3 children. Both my parents were PhDs. My dad was a scientist. My mom had a PhD in educational psychology. I'm married. I've been married for almost 21 years with 4 children aged 18, 17, 15, and 14, which is really, I'm actually only 35. I look this old because I have so many kids. It's true. Then let's see what else. I've been at IBM for 15 years. I was an entrepreneur. All this is on LinkedIn. I've started a business, run a business, sold a business, and then kind of did a career in reverse and wound up at Big Blue for the majority of my adulthood. So that's me. And as Thurna said, I try to be approachable. Let's start with the concept of humility, right? And so within the context of each of these kind of hinge points or guideposts, I'm going to talk about the people who've influenced me and kind of what I've learned. And I think because the most important piece, if there's anything that I can relay to you, is the people that you run into and the people that mentor you and the people who take an interest in you for whatever reason that will really guide and build not only what your professional life looks like, but your personal life as well. And I've been super fortunate to, over the course of my life, been able to develop kind of a real broad spectrum. Had a number of people take an active interest in me. And they've had a big hand, especially as I got into my 20s, in shaping who I've become. And at each point, it's kind of like you get what you need. And so we'll talk about humility and accountability first, right? So in my early mid-20s, I graduated from college, and then I delivered pizza for 9 months, and then I got a sales job. I had a couple sales jobs and decided that I needed to go back to college. I go back to school. So I went and enrolled at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. for an international relations degree, which I ultimately switched to business. But when I was there, I got introduced to a guy, and he was a really interesting cat. This was the early 1990s, and he was doing a lot of World Bank related consulting business with companies in Russia and in Germany. So this is 90, 91, 92, 93. So just the wall had just fallen. The Soviet Union was crumbling, and he was working over there. And so I started working for him, doing some consulting work. What was interesting though is that what I said is we worked together for a while, and then one day we were having a cigarette, because I did smoke back then and I don't anymore, and a drink, and he said, you'll be something one day when you learn two things. And I was 26 and pretty brash, and I said, what two things are those? And he said, when you learn humility and how to forgive yourself. All right. Now, that was pretty intense, pretty intense insight for a 26-year-old to take in, right? Learn how to forgive myself. What do you mean? But what he was focused on is, and it was the beginning for me of the shifting of my lens from an internal focus to an external focus, right? And that wasn't the end of it, right? It was the beginning of my journey of really becoming a person, in the sense that someone who wasn't thinking only about themselves and how things impacted themselves. And that to me was a really a big moment, right? So that experience, and I worked for him for a couple of years, and I finished grad school, and I started a business. And the business, if any of you are entrepreneurs, you know that it's really easy to connect your self-worth with your business's success. And it is a very, very dangerous model. It's great when it works. It's not so great when it doesn't work. And so I went through this experience of starting a business, and I ran it from zero to like $3.5 million in annual sales in 20 months. Sold it for a small amount of money, and then wound up going to work for the company that bought it. What was interesting though is that at that point my progress kind of stopped as a person. Right, and I got kind of stuck. I'm getting married, which was awesome, and then I went from one job to the next. It was at that point, right, and I'm going to switch to a personal story. Going through this process, I was sitting at the dining room table with my wife, and I had two kids at the time, and my lens had kind of gotten stuck on myself. And one day I was sitting at the dining room table, and my wife is angry with me. And she was very angry with me. And I reverted to my typical, she doesn't get it. I work so hard, blah, blah, blah. And for whatever reason, I stopped myself and I said, she's madder than she should be about something that I didn't think was a big deal. And I said, hold on a second. Why are you so mad about this? And then she explained that all of the actions that she'd been dealing with for a number of years already related to my words and my actions not matching, which is simply an immature component of, I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and I don't care what you think. And that was the next step, the next click in the lens switching, right? It's important, I think, because all of these things, your personal life and your professional lives mirror each other, and there's a lot of, at least if you're like me, there's a lot of crossover, right? So the ability to take feedback, right? The ability to course correct, the ability to take feedback, listen to the intent behind the feedback rather than the tone, and to incorporate that and to really chew on it, turn it over, and where it makes sense to make change as a result is a really, really important aspect of this leadership thing, right? Because from a leadership perspective, you don't have all the answers ever. And what the best leaders do, or they take feedback, they take what they hear, they take what the feedback given to them, what they see in the market, and they incorporate it into their process. It's a really important aspect of self-revelation, right? And the ability to then act and course correct. And certainly I'm not done, but then, there's a next level. I wound up in a job at SAP, and The next piece I'm going to talk about is consistency, right? So you talk about humility and the ability to shift your lens, but at the same time, whether it's personally or professionally, and it's taken me a long time to learn this, the ability to be consistent, right? Be consistent for your employees, be consistent for your clients, be consistent for your bosses, for your family is all interrelated, right? It's the words and the actions, and it's knowing what they can expect. And I didn't realize how big a deal it was until there were two. I'll tell you two anecdotes, right? So the first one was a forecasting anecdote. I worked for a guy, and in the second to last week of the year, I moved $1.5 million of software out of the core. Right now, doesn't sound like a big deal, but as he said, if you do that and all your peers do that and everybody does that, we miss by $1 billion worldwide. I was like, oh, I can understand why you went. And I induced pain to him, and his boss was just not going to let him do it. He said, okay, now you got to go find it somewhere else. And 2 weeks left in the year, it's hard to do. So he called me up, and he happened to be a friend of mine who was my boss. And he said to me, Matt, I've been sleeping on this all night. I barely slept. And I came up with two conclusions. Either one, you fundamentally lack the intelligence to forecast properly. And I don't believe that's so. You went to Rutgers University, you have an MBA from GW, or you just don't care. Which one is it? And I said nothing. And I never missed a forecast to the downside by more than 2% in the next 5 years, right? Consistency matters, right? And the second piece is, and there's a personal consistency aspect to it as well. I was out to dinner with a guy from our consulting business, and I was feeling pretty good. And this is tied in with the humility piece as well. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I closed a bunch of business, running a big account. I've had the CEO of IBM, as my executive sponsor on something. And I was talking to this gentleman at dinner I went out for a drink and dinner with him, and I was talking about my career. And he said, Matt, you have a problem. I said, I have a problem. What problem do I have? I'm wonderful. He said, Matt, leadership can't trust you. I was like, what are you talking about? I do everything I say I'm going to do. He said, you're inconsistent. He said, I was talking with someone, and they said, someone said something about your behavior and what you were doing, and said, oh, that's just Matt being Matt. And he said, Matt being Matt means you're done, right? Because you can't be trusted. You can't be counted upon to say the right thing at the right time in the right way, that it can be heard and doesn't, blow up the spot, right? So that's a client statement. That's a personal statement. And as a leader, right? I think Fiona and Dorinda have gotten to know me over the last year or so. My message, the important part, is it doesn't change, right? It's about positivity. It's about the team. It's about performance. It's about integrity. And what I say I'm going to do, I do. But the only way that I've gotten to here is having to have people like the ones I've told you already give me that kind of counsel, right? And that aspect, I'd like you all to kind of reflect on what you do, when you do it, and the times when you throw a wrench or a spanner in things, you do something that is unexpected, or you do something in a way that's different, or you speak to people in a way differently than they're used to, whether they're with your kids. I mean, for me, it's really evident with my children, right? And the more consistent that I've gotten, and the less hubris that I've lived with, the better my relationships have gotten with them, and the more interactive and the happier they are, because They're not living in a world where they don't know what's coming next. Is he going to be laughing? Is he going to be mad? Is he going to be yelling? Is he going to be? And it's really impactful, right? It's really impactful on people. And leadership is all about people, right? And then let's talk a little bit about growth mindset, right? My wife is the best decision I've ever made in my life, bar none, number one. And there's not even another decision that's in the same hemisphere. And it's because of her growth mindset, right? And having a partner who wants the best for you and holds you accountable, right? And this is the thing, it goes back to humility and it goes back to accountability. You know, having a partner that holds you accountable and makes you want to be more accountable to them, but to yourself, is probably the most important aspect of the sustainable and stable basis for leadership, right? You know, the very, very difficult to be consistent, very, very difficult to have an externally focused lens when you don't function that way at home, and when your partner is not on board with you in that same way. And so I'll tell you a funny story. My wife before we moved to Singapore 5 years ago. My wife went and got a certification in life coaching. And I said to her at the time, I said, there's no way that, I said, absolutely go do it, 100%, have fun. I said, but there's no way that you're going to do this and not want to divorce me in 18 months. And she said, oh, fine, right? 17 months later, sitting in the bedroom, and she says, either you're going to go get coaching or we're getting a divorce, right? And I said, you're a month early, right? But the point was that you have to have a growth mindset. You have to want to change. You have to want to understand your faults and try to improve, right? And that aspect of growth mindset, when you don't accept that, when you accept your fundamental fallibility and you accept your fundamental flaws, it becomes much easier to then take feedback, and not negatively, but to evolve, if you will, right? And that evolution is, you know, I wasn't capable of it 15, 18, 20 years ago. I wasn't like all of you, right, who were actively seeking input and a community. And I mean, it's awesome today. This didn't really exist 25 or 30 years ago, where you could be connected to people from all over the world in all different phases between LinkedIn and these networking groups. It was a lot different, right? And it's so awesome that you have this capability. Use it, right? Evolve, and there's no shame in asking for help, right? And that's a real big part of the growth mindset. And then another guy that I work with, who is awesome, and I love him to death. And he's a colleague, and he's taken my son in when my son was traveling back to Singapore, and brought him to the airport and had him stay at his house. But he, more than anybody, has been a propellant, a catalyst, if you will, for me, in terms of what's possible, right? I talked to him about something. He said, of course you could do that. There's nothing you can't do. And to have people who are champions, and they're champions not just because they expect to get something, but these are, again, part of that fabric, and someone who I take a lot of leadership guidance from, right? I watch what he does, right? And by the way, it's not just men, right? So I've had great women bosses who I've taken stuff from, and it's universal. And what I found as I've moved further and further in my career in IBM, especially over the last 8 or 10 years, I've learned so much from every boss. Now, very few of them are like me. I think Dorinda said, I'm probably, and Fiona may not, or Head may not, I'm very un-IBM-like in my day-to-day approach, right? I'm a little bit less structured, a little bit less process focused. I follow the process. I follow the rules. But I'm exactly. But I'm not stuck. I'm not stuck on hierarchy, right? And I think it's important. I think that's an important aspect as well. You have to reach people wherever they are. And really, title doesn't matter. It's about what you produce and how you feel producing it. People, we're doing hard things, and those hard things require people to do uncomfortable things, to work harder and longer than they like, to have conversations that they don't necessarily want to have, and to make decisions that are difficult as human beings, right? Where you have to, you're responsible, and this is an aspect of leadership that people don't talk about a lot. You're responsible for people's lives, right? And so I had my old boss when I was working at the DuPont account. My old boss said to me, he said, Matt, he said, 400 people are counting on you to be the best. I said, what are you talking about? He said, there are 100 salespeople that work for you. He said, they have spouses and average of 2 children each. That's 400 people. Their mortgages, their vacations, their food, everything depends on whether or not you do your job and you're the best and you win. And while it's a little bit of pressure, it's true, right? When you lead, you take on the responsibility for the success of those around you. And it's not and for making decisions that are not necessarily easy or fun or comfortable. And that's part of the mantle of leadership, right? So humility, consistency, growth mindset. My old boss, the same one who talked to me about the forecasting. So I'm going to give you a couple, and then we can. I'll close it up because I've had a couple of things. And then he said, leadership is where you define reality and provide hope. As a leader, that's what you do. You define reality and provide hope. And I will tell you something. Everybody's probably heard about the Steve Jobs with the reality distortion field, right? It's true. It really is true, right? As you especially when you lead larger and larger organizations, you have to ignore the small and what seems obvious and get people to focus their lens on things that are bigger or different in a way that may seem unrealistic. But without leadership really is about stretching people's boundaries of vision, right? And giving them, defining reality and providing hope that it can be done, that tomorrow is going to be better than today, that there's a reason for what they're doing, and that there's a joint goal that's aligned to it. And again, it can't be facile, and it can't be put on, right? The one thing about really like good leadership is that it's from the heart, and it's real, and it's almost palpable and tangible, right? It's kind of like a warm blanket that surrounds you when you're doing stuff and you believe, right? How do you develop leadership skills? It's not the same for each person. It develops differently at a different pace. And people, not everybody is meant to do what I do. Not everybody's meant to do what you do. Don't measure yourself, I guess if I could say anything, don't measure yourself against other people from a leadership perspective. You take in what you see and what you appreciate about others, but depending on what you do and where you do it, you can be a leader in a church community. You can be a leader in business. You can be a leader in your house. You can be a leader on a basketball court or a football field, and they all require different pieces of you and different sort of skill sets. And so that there's no one leadership style that fits all. And I don't think there's any one leadership style for a given situation. Let me see what else. So I asked you to tell me what your definition, or to write down what your definition of success is. So some people throw them up into the chat, and then I'll tell you mine, and I'll tell you why. And then we can get to some of these questions. So success, enjoying the work I do, Fiona, love it. Adding value to positive development from Lubaba. Recognition and fulfillment. Success is being able to leave this world better than I found it. Love it. Congruence between your life purpose and what you're doing with your life. Discipline and capacity, achieve your goal, achieving the goals and expectations. I like it. Love that, Define. Okay, so your definition of success, and the definition of success is really what I believe underpins your leadership style, right? And it becomes kind of a guidepost, if you will. I use that term a lot for what you bring into the world. So for me, and it was not always the case, but for me, my definition of success is when every person that comes in contact with me personally, professionally, is better off for the interaction. Right? So I try to live that every day. I don't succeed at it every day or in every interaction, but truly, you know, if you have a culture of yes, if you have a mindset of yes, have a mindset of abundance and a mindset of can, my wife would contest that I do not have an abundance mindset when it comes to our family finances. But other than that, I try to bring my energy and give that to people, and that to me is kind of what my leadership style is all about, right? And I think Fiona's nodding a bit, and Thurinda as well. That's how I lead, and that's what I have to give to an organization and to a team. That's how I roll, right? And I think for me, coming to that took a long time, and then not only coming to that, but then being able to put it into action more and more. For me, is probably, you know, I'm having more fun now probably than I've ever had, and working harder and in a job that's super challenging. But the team is switched on. They want to learn. They want to achieve. They're making magic happen every day with our clients and out in the world and with their families in an incredibly difficult circumstance, right? And for me, that is, you know, to be able to be part of that team, to be able to help ease a bit of their burden on a daily basis. Or I was just talking with my boss about that, saying I spend probably 50, 60% of my time taking obstacles out of the team's way, because that's what they need me to do today. And that's not just internally, it's with clients in lots of different ways, personal too, right? I ping people and I asked them, you know, no business talk, how are you doing? And they said, I'm stressed, like uncertainty, COVID. So I just talk, right? People need someone to talk to. So that is kind of where I get to where leadership is not about me at all, right? Because there's no doubt that the success that I have is, especially in leadership roles, directly related and mostly related to the willingness of people around me to work harder than me and do things that are harder than I do, right? And to not take credit for them, but to give them an opportunity to shine and to move forward and feel good about what they're doing. And to represent that across the business and the world from an IBM perspective, certainly, is what I try to do. And I think that if you look around your lives, whether it's you or people around you, you'll probably look and be able to see, whether it's in the mirror or elsewhere, people who kind of evince that same mindset. Right? And I'm fortunate to be married to a person like that and to work for people like that, and so it makes it a lot. I've got great role models every day who hold me accountable, make me humble, right? Demand me that I be consistent, and, you know, force me and help me to have a growth mindset. So, and that's kind of, you know, I got here with a little bit of luck, a lot of hard work, and a lot of help. So that's it in a nutshell. We've got about 20 minutes left. If you want to ask some questions, I can answer. So Ella asked the question, and then just open it up to conversation. So the right people who helped pave my career path, a lot of people call it luck. And thank you for the compliment. So I think, my superpower is people, right? I'm really good at people. I'm high EQ. I've always been like that. When I was younger, it was more for selfish ends, and as I've gotten older, I've used my superpower for good more than evil. But I think the ability to, I was talking with a guy last night I met 10, 12 years ago, and I saw him on a chart for something internal, and I didn't realize he was still with the company, and I reached out, and we connected, and he said, I always saw the potential. It's so good to see where you've gotten, and I'm so happy that someone like you has been able to progress the way you have, right? So I think that if anybody's an Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand fan, I'm a huge Ayn Rand reader. Atlas Shrugged is really one of my personal guideposts, but not in the selfish way. And really about personal accountability, right? And it's really about potential. And I don't believe in altruism for altruism's sake. I think that everybody derives a benefit from doing good and from helping. And the people who helped either saw something in me that engendered a feeling in them. I gave them something, but they all probably saw a kind of raw something or other that they felt needed to be nurtured. And in every phase, I was really fortunate to find people who helped shape me in that way. So is it luck? There's an aspect of luck to it, but I do believe that, Ella, that you, in many ways, you make your own luck by being open and by being capable and by being consistent and all those things, right? So I can tell you, when a lot of those people were coaching me, I was not consistent, and my lens was not necessarily externally focused, but it's gotten better over time. And I think, and what I've seen is that the type of interaction, the type of coaching that I've gotten has changed as well, which is really cool. What did I learn from my entrepreneur journey, and how has it shaped my leadership style? The entrepreneurship journey was really interesting. It was, looking back, I don't know how I did it, right? Because it was, on a shoestring budget, and I was by myself, and I created this thing with a friend out of nothing. And I don't know, it wasn't until much later that I actually realized and gave myself credit for what I'd done, because I didn't consider it a success. And my wife, who you'll hear me go back to often, was like, "Are you kidding me? Look what you did." And I was like, "Yeah, but I didn't make $1 million, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do that." And I would miss vacation. She went on vacation with her family, and I stayed back because I had to work. So the entrepreneurship is very hard. I think for me, it was a transition point from being a kid and not being really self-confident. And it started my journey towards kind of becoming a semi-complete human being. From a leadership perspective, I think that I'm an intrapreneur, right? My wife always laughs. She's like, I can't believe that you're not running businesses and starting businesses. She said, "You're so energetic, blah, blah, blah." I said, for whatever reason, I've taken the antibodies at IBM. It fits and I like it, but because I'm able to get things done in spite of the machine, and really taking that entrepreneurial mindset, and that's a growth mindset, that you can do anything. Anything's possible. You can accomplish anything. There is nothing that you can't do if you believe and you can tell the story properly, and you understand other people's motivations and what they're trying to accomplish, all within process, Fiona, right? But it's true, right? There's nothing that you can't do. There's nothing that can't be done if you listen with enough intent and then react from a place of consistency and selflessness, right? That's, I mean, you know, I've done transactions from $10,000 to $150, $200 million, and they all share the same thing. The client was trying to accomplish something. And if you can figure out all of the different pieces, like multi-dimensional chess, if you play across all the dimensions and you try to solve everybody's problem to the extent possible, you can align almost all of it up with your goals, but your goals are subjugated to the goals of the client and the problem you're trying to solve. If you take that approach, you pretty much get anything done. Right? So that's probably one of the things I learned most. The harder I work, the luckier I get. Have you always thought this way, or did something happen to change your mind along the way? Again, it's been a real journey for me. It's really easy on the way to get caught up in your success and to get caught up in your own rhetoric and, you know, find people who tell you you're wonderful and to think that they're right. And it's really easy to stop listening. So I think, you know, for me, it's still a journey, right? Every day, you know, trying to make sure that I do the right thing, say the right thing, treat people with respect and dignity, and because I'm very type. I mean, I may talk a little bit more slowly now than I used to, and a little bit more softly, but I am type A, and I am all about winning, and I'm all about chopping wood and grinding and leaving no stone unturned until victory is ours. So it's a constant battle, and my wife again is always telling me that it's not a zero-sum game, and especially at home. So learning how to kind of bring that, you know, it's a balance, right? And it's a constant. It is an evolution. That's the best I can put it. Do I have any advice on how we promote this style of leadership? You know, I think it's really just a matter of being you, right? If this is who you want to be, and this is how you want to, what you want to bring into the world and the workplace, you know, they may be, and so there are certain workplaces that are not going to be productive for you because it's not something that works there, right? And we all have had rough bosses and been in bad situations and relationships. So I think that the leadership, you build the world that you want around you, right? And it's choice about where you work and your peers and how you interact with your peers and your employees and your employer and your family and friends. And the more you know, I got a really nice compliment the other day from, you know, some friends of ours from Singapore. You know, I've changed a lot in the last 5 years, right? And she said, the work you've done on yourself is amazing. I said, thanks. Work in progress, right? But that's, you know, I'm 53, right? So 5 years I was 48. Think about that. And she, you know, you react to different circumstances in different ways, and might have been a little rough for a while there, but we've moved beyond it. I said before, there is no, so, and to the aspiration to leadership roles, I would say this, you have to act like a leader, right? That doesn't mean making decisions or taking control. It's really, you know, what does leadership mean to you? And I think that people look to people for leadership when they act in a way that that connects, and whether it's from a values perspective, an action perspective. It's not just what people say, it's what you do, right? Is it, do you open the door? Do you pick up a piece of garbage on the street when you see it, even if it's not yours? Do you think about your peers when you're going to get a coffee, and do you offer to get them coffees? You know, all of those little things that show consideration. I think, you know, we didn't talk about, but I think that concept of being considerate, which means you're thinking about others as well as yourself. I think that engenders a sense of teamwork and friendship and congeniality that is kind of drives a lot of that leadership thought. And the other thing is this, you know, and there's no place. It's true. It's about results. It's about winning also, right? So, and the result may not be a deal or winning. It may be designing something or completing something or getting a team to get whatever it is, right? But the ultimate aspect of leadership is to bring something from one place to another in a way that's productive and delivers a result. And so, you know, my brand inside of IBM, I think if you asked the leadership teams who hired me and the people who work with me, is my brand is I get shit done, right? I mean, and I get it done in a way that is productive, right? I don't blow up the spot. I'm not negative. I don't say no. My answer is if I don't know, I'll figure out how, and if I can't do it, I'll let you know, and you won't get surprised. But delivering a result is really how leadership starts, right? Because in order to deliver a result, that's not just you. You have to figure out how to team, right? I've had a global career, starting in the U.S., traveling across Asia. Have I had to adapt my leadership style? How do you stay true to who you are as a person? I have definitely had to adapt my leadership style, 100%. But it hasn't changed from a core perspective. The cadence with which I speak, the directness with which I speak, the adjectives I use, the anecdotes I use to express things, are all very different in Asia than they were in the US. And I can speak much differently to an American than I can anybody in Asia. But that's not a bad thing, right? Learning new stories and how to express, storytell so that it's consumable by a new audience is pretty powerful. And I think more than anything, what I've learned is patience, right? You know, dealing with an Aussie is different than dealing with someone in India, and different than dealing with someone in New Zealand, different than dealing with someone in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, right? And Hong Kong and Taiwan and mainland and Korea. Everybody's different, and all the cultures have different needs, right? You know, and so the patience to listen, right, and then to ask relevant questions about why, and not put people into hard spots, certainly publicly, but even privately. Those are great lessons to use with your kids. And that's, you know, it's been really interesting, right? It's been really interesting, but it's been a wonderful journey. I don't have any plans on leaving anytime soon, right? It's pretty awesome out here, and you know, I continue to meet fantastic people like yourselves who want to learn and grow, and it's very cool, very cool. Any other questions?
Feel free to turn on your mic and just ask the question directly.
Yeah.
So you've traveled all around the world. What's your favorite food around the world?
Oh, the one I'm eating at the time. You can't, I mean, I have had, in mainland and Taiwan, they tried to get me, right? And I had lots of fun stuff, which was fine. I love Western food. I love Peranakan food, which is kind of Malaysian, Singaporean fusion. I love New Zealand beef. I love Northern Indian and Southern Indian. I love Vietnamese food and Thai. I mean, there's whatever I'm eating at the moment is my favorite food. Serious.
Beautiful.
Same thing with beer. Whatever beer I'm drinking at the moment. Any other questions? It's a good question. Well, look, I hope that feel free to link with me on LinkedIn, and I hope this landed for you guys. And if there's anything, if there's coaching or if there's a question you have, if I can help in any way, I mean it. Dorinda and Fiona will tell you I'm happy to help to the extent I can. I do not check LinkedIn every day. There's just too much content being created for me to be on LinkedIn every day. But I wish everybody safety and health, and really appreciate the opportunity to spend the time with you all.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
A lot of what you said, I think resonated, especially, I guess for me in my role, it'll be to do better at forecasting.
I didn't mean it specifically to you, Dorinda, but if that's how you took it, I'm okay with it.
No, there's a lot of great things, especially around consistency and growth. And thank you so much. Really, really appreciate everything, especially the stories you said. They're quite inspiring. So thanks for your time.
You got it. Thanks, everybody. Be safe. Nice to meet you all.
So yeah, that concludes tonight's webinar. And thank you also to the PDF team for making this webinar possible. Thank you everyone for joining. So next webinar we have on the 10th of December, and it will be joined by Kerry Gamble. Kerry is the former Vice President and professional speaker from Professional Speakers Australia and the author of Unstoppable. She'll be talking to us about communicating with confidence and authority. So the registration link, we'll just post it on the chat for anyone that's joining. So do feel free to follow us on social media. Our newsletter you can register through our website. And thank you everyone for joining. And I hope everyone has a good night.